My name is Daniel Brooks, and I am 58 years old. 2 nights ago, my daughter looked me straight in the eye across my own kitchen table and said, "You're useless to us now." I thought it was just a cruel thing said in anger after we argued about my retirement and the future of the company I built. A few hours later, I was buttoning the white shirt I always wear to Sunday dinner at her house when my phone buzzed on the dresser. It was a text from my lawyer of 26 years. He never texts me. For words, "Call me. It's urgent." When I dialed, he didn't say hello. He said, "Daniel, are you alone? Your daughter and your ex-wife just filed a petition to have you declared legally incompetent. They're trying to take your house, your business, and your medical decisions. If we hadn't caught it today, you would have woken up tomorrow with nothing." I stood there in my quiet bedroom, tie half done, realizing my own child was trying to erase me from my life while I was still healthy enough to sign my own name. And in that moment, I made a decision. I was still going to that dinner, but I wasn't going as their victim. I was going as the man who was about to destroy their entire plan in one night. After I hung up the phone with my lawyer, I stood in my bedroom for a moment holding my tie in my hand like I didn't remember what it was for. The house was quiet the way it always was on Sundays, but suddenly that quiet didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the kind of silence right before a storm breaks open. My daughter had told me 2 nights ago that I was useless, but I didn't think she meant it literally. I didn't think she and my ex-wife would go this far. When my lawyer explained the petition, declaring me legally incompetent, taking control of my company, my home, my decisions, I felt something inside me go cold, not fear exactly, but recognition. They thought I was slowing down. They mistook age for weakness, and that mistake was going to cost them. I finished the tie slowly, almost methodically, and grabbed my keys. My reflection in the hallway mirror didn't look like the kind of man who needed guardianship. I still ran a construction firm with 200 employees. I still negotiated deals. I still drove myself to work every morning. But according to the papers they filed, I was already halfway to a nursing home. I walked out to my car and sat behind the wheel for a moment, letting the engine idle. My lawyer's voice replayed in my head. "Daniel, if we hadn't caught it today, tomorrow morning they would have had control of everything." That was the part that stuck with me. How close I came to losing my own life without even knowing it. The drive to my daughter's neighborhood took 20 minutes, but it felt shorter. I ran through the past few months in my mind like I was reviewing footage from a security camera. Emily asking questions about my will. My ex-wife suddenly calling to check in. My daughter insisting we talk about retirement, then getting frustrated when I said I wasn't ready. Back then, I thought it was family tension. Now, I saw the truth clearly. They had been preparing for this, slow and careful, waiting for the moment to strike. They thought tonight would be that moment. They had no idea I was already ahead of them. I pulled into Emily's driveway, noticing the clean lines of the house, the new tinted windows, the fresh landscaping. All things she liked to brag she paid for herself. Except that wasn't the truth. I had helped her more times than I could count. I covered half her divorce attorney fees. I bailed her out when she mismanaged her first business loan. I spent decades stepping in quietly, thinking that was what fathers were supposed to do. Now she was trying to repay me by taking the company I built from the ground up. The front door opened before I even reached it. My ex-wife stood there with her arms crossed and a polite, crisp smile that told me I wasn't welcome before she said a single word. She always had a talent for pretending. Tonight, she wasn't pretending very well. "Daniel," she said, tilting her head like she was speaking to an elderly neighbor. "You're late." I looked at her and felt no anger, just a clear calm that came from knowing I wasn't the one who should be nervous. "No," I said. "I'm right on time." As I stepped inside, the smell of roasted vegetables and expensive candles filled the hallway. It was the kind of staged domestic warmth my ex-wife lived for. The kind of environment she thought could disguise what she'd been plotting with our daughter. Emily stood in the dining room arranging plates like she was hosting a charity fundraiser. When she looked up and saw me, something flashed across her face. Annoyance first, then hesitation. Not guilt. Emily didn't do guilt. But she looked at me the way someone looks at a problem they thought they already solved. "Dad," she said, her voice too bright. "We were just talking about you." I bet they were. I walked further in, taking in the details. The signed petition was probably still in her office upstairs. The lawyers had already filed it. They were expecting me to sit down, eat dinner, and listen while they explained what was best for me. They didn't know my lawyer had already shown me every page. They didn't know I wasn't walking in blind. They didn't know I'd already started planning my counterattack. I glanced at the table, 3 plates. No extras. No guests. Just the 3 of us. That alone told me everything. This wasn't dinner. This was a meeting disguised as a meal. My ex-wife closed the door behind me and stood a little too close, like she was positioning herself to block the exit if I tried to leave. Emily motioned for me to sit, but I didn't. Not yet. I looked at her, not as a father, but as the man she tried to take down. Emily, I said quietly. Before we start, I need to ask you one question. She blinked, surprised by my tone. What question? I stepped forward just enough that she had to tilt her chin up to meet my eyes. When exactly did you decide I didn't deserve the life I built? My ex-wife stiffened. Emily froze. And that was the moment the first crack appeared in their plan. Emily didn't answer at first. She just stared at me like she was waiting for the right mask to put on. She finally settled on the calm, controlled expression she used in company meetings, the one that made her look reasonable even when she was lying. She stepped closer to the counter and said she wasn't trying to hurt me. She was trying to protect me. That word hit harder than her insult from 2 nights ago. Protect. My ex-wife jumped in right behind her, clasping her hands together like she was delivering bad news to a distant relative, saying I'd been forgetful lately, missing small things, and that they were worried I was overwhelmed. She said it gently, but it was rehearsed. Everything about this moment was rehearsed. I looked at the table where a stack of printed notes and highlighted talking points sat next to Emily's plate. They had scripted this entire conversation long before I walked in. I told them plainly that forgetting a lunch meeting didn't make me incompetent, and disagreeing with Emily's plans for the company didn't make me delusional. But Emily didn't back down. She told me the company needed new leadership, someone younger, someone with drive, someone the investors trusted. She said everyone could see I was slipping. I asked her who everyone was because I sure hadn't heard a single complaint from a board member or partner. She told me she'd been handling concerns privately so things wouldn't stress me out. That was the moment I realized she hadn't just planned to take control. She'd been building a case long before filing the petition. I asked her why she hadn't come to me directly. She didn't answer. Instead, she started explaining how a temporary conservatorship was normal, how it didn't mean I'd lose everything, how it was just until things stabilized. I told her it meant exactly what it sounded like, stripping me of control of the company I built from nothing. My ex-wife chimed in with her usual tone, telling me I was overreacting and taking things too personally. I said, calmly, that attempting to legally erase someone from their own life tends to get personal. That was when Emily dropped the mask. She said she had earned the right to run the company because she'd spent her life preparing for it. I told her preparation wasn't the same as betrayal. Her jaw clenched. She told me she wasn't betraying me. She was saving the company from my pride. Then she asked me to sign the packet of documents they had brought. She didn't even try to hide it. She moved toward her purse on the counter, the same purse she'd been hovering near since I walked in. She pulled out a manila folder, thick, tabbed, ready. I could tell they expected me to sit down, listen, and quietly accept everything they decided. I told her I'd already spoken with my lawyer. She froze, not dramatically, not with a gasp, but with a subtle tightening of her shoulders, the kind that only someone who knows they've been caught would show. My ex-wife's voice cracked just a little when she asked me why I'd talked to a lawyer before coming to dinner. I told her because I had a hunch. Because the look on Emily's face the night she told me I was useless didn't come from anger, it came from confidence. She had already decided to take everything. Emily swallowed and started speaking in that defensive, careful tone she used when she was about to lose control. She said the petition wasn't personal. She said they just needed to protect the company and my legacy. I asked her if that's why she spoke to board members behind my back. She stiffened. I asked if that's why she tried to get my senior partners to sign off on a management change before even discussing it with me. She said nothing. The truth was written all over her face. I told her I understood exactly what she had done. She had tried to box me in, emotionally, legally, professionally. She had assumed I was predictable. She had assumed I'd show up here confused and overwhelmed, ready to be convinced. Instead, I stepped closer to her and told her she made one mistake. She underestimated me. In that moment, I saw fear flash across her face. Not terror, but the sharp recognition that the plan she had carefully constructed was starting to crumble. Her mother stepped forward and said we should all calm down, but neither of us looked at her. Emily finally sighed and said she didn't want to fight me. She said she wanted to transition leadership smoothly. I asked her why she didn't wait for me to retire on my own terms. She said because I was taking too long. That was it. The truth, simple and selfish. I told her she wasn't taking the company from me. She wasn't taking my house, my decisions, or my rights. She said she already filed the petition. I told her I knew. I told her I had already filed my response. She blinked. She didn't expect that. I leaned in slightly and told her something else. My lawyer found something in her filing. Something she never planned on me seeing. And I watched the fear on her face deepen because she suddenly realized the one thing she never prepared for. I had evidence she didn't know I had. And I wasn't leaving that house without using it. Emily didn't say anything for a moment. She just stood there holding that manila folder like she wasn't sure whether to put it down or hide it behind her back. Her eyes moved from me to her mother, then back again, trying to read whether I was bluffing. I wasn't. I walked past her and pulled out a chair at the table, the same table where we used to eat takeout on Friday nights when she was a kid, and I told her to sit because I wasn't leaving until we had this conversation the right way. She hesitated, then sat across from me, folding her hands carefully like she was preparing for a deposition. Her mother took the seat beside her, clearly wanting to show a united front, but the nervous tapping of her fingers on the table gave her away. I kept my voice calm when I told them that my lawyer discovered something in their petition, something sloppy enough to get the whole thing thrown out if I wanted. Emily's brow tightened just slightly. She hated not knowing something. She asked what he found, but she asked it too quickly, and the crack in her confidence widened. I told her the petition included statements, written, signed, and presented as fact, claiming I had missed multiple board payments and failed to authorize payroll on 2 separate months. I said that would have been a compelling detail if the payroll system didn't record every administrative action under a unique digital signature. A signature that proves she was the one who approved those transactions using my login credentials. I watched the color drain from her cheeks. She didn't expect me to know that. She definitely didn't expect me to bring it up at her dinner table. I told her calmly that logging into another executive's credentials without authorization wasn't just a bad look, it was a federal offense. Her mother shifted uncomfortably, asking if we really needed to drag legal terminology into what was supposed to be a family discussion. I told her it stopped being a family discussion the moment they filed paperwork to strip me of my autonomy. Emily tried to recover by saying she only used my login because it was urgent, and she thought I'd want things handled. I asked her why she didn't just call me. She didn't have an answer. Instead, she took a slow breath and said she did what she had to do. Translation: she did what she thought she could get away with. Then I told her there was something else, because there always is when a liar rushes their plan. She had attached a letter supposedly written by my doctor claiming concerns about my cognitive decline. The problem was simple. My doctor had retired a year ago. He didn't write that letter. His signature was copied from a prescription pad template that had been discontinued 5 years earlier. I watched panic flicker across her face, so suddenly she tried to disguise it by reaching for her water glass. Her hand trembled. My ex-wife placed a hand on her daughter's wrist as if to steady her, but it wasn't out of comfort. It was out of fear of what Emily might say next. I leaned back in my chair and said the judge wasn't going to see a concerned daughter trying to protect her father. She was going to see a woman forging medical documents and accessing restricted systems to seize control of a multi-million-dollar company. Emily's eyes locked onto mine, and there was no warmth left in them, only calculation. She asked me what I planned to do with all of this. I told her the truth. I hadn't decided yet. Then I let the silence stretch just enough to make them both uncomfortable. That was when something shifted. My ex-wife suddenly leaned forward, speaking quickly, saying this was all a misunderstanding, that emotions had gotten out of hand, and maybe the petition was too extreme. She said they could withdraw it, talk things over, find a solution that wouldn't damage the family. I told her the family was damaged the moment they tried to take my signature away from me. Emily inhaled sharply and said they only wanted to make sure the company survived. I told her the company survived because I built it from nothing, not because she tried to steal it in the middle of the night. She fired back that she wasn't stealing anything. She was securing a future. Then she said something she shouldn't have. She said, "If you'd stepped aside when you were supposed to, none of this would have been necessary." That was the sentence that told me everything. This wasn't about concern. This wasn't about protecting assets. This wasn't about investors or stress or aging. This was ambition. Raw, sharp, cold ambition that had been simmering long before my divorce, long before she joined the company, maybe long before she even realized it herself. I stood up slowly and walked toward the window overlooking her backyard. the same yard where she used to chase fireflies as a child. I told her I always planned to retire someday. I told her I envisioned handing the company to someone capable, ethical, and trustworthy. But I said she had removed herself from that future with her own actions. She asked me what that meant, and there was a hint of desperation in her voice now. I told her I had drafted a contingency plan years ago, one she didn't know existed, one that outlined a successor if I ever felt she wasn't the right choice. I said I never thought I'd have to use it, but now I didn't have a choice. She stood up so quickly her chair scraped across the floor. She said I couldn't do that. I told her I already had. Her mother's face went pale. Emily stepped closer, asking who I named as successor. I didn't answer. I simply opened the front door and told them dinner was over. And right before I walked out, I looked at Emily and said she had one night. One, to decide how much of her reputation she wanted to lose. Because in the morning, I was going to finish what they started. And I wasn't going to lose. I didn't sleep that night. I tried, but my mind kept replaying every word, every look, every subtle shift in Emily's expression. I sat in my study with the lamp on low, staring at the framed photographs on the wall. Emily at 8 years old holding her first science fair trophy. Emily at 17, graduating valedictorian. Emily at 23, shaking hands with the board after her first successful project. Somewhere between those moments and tonight, something had changed. Or maybe it had always been there, buried under praise and ambition, waiting for the right pressure to surface. Around 5 a.m., after hours of silence so thick it felt like it had weight, I got up, put on a clean shirt, and drove to my office downtown. The security guard, Harold, nodded to me with his usual tired half-smile. He didn't know anything was wrong. No one here knew what was brewing beneath the surface. And that was exactly how I needed it. I went straight to the top floor, unlocked my office, and turned on the lights. The glass walls reflected the skyline, orange and pink from the sunrise. This company was my life's work, every floor, every department, every system built piece by piece over decades. And my daughter had tried to take it with a stack of forged signatures and a petition filed before dinner. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up the encrypted folder my lawyer and I had created years ago. Contingency materials, board memos, emergency succession directives, things I never thought I'd need. But today I did. At exactly 7:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was Sam, my lawyer. I answered immediately. He didn't bother with greetings. She called me, he said. Twice. I leaned back in my chair. What did she say? She said she wants to resolve the situation amicably, which, in translation, means she wants to stop you before you file your counteraction this morning. I nodded, even though he couldn't see. She sounded scared? She sounded furious underneath it, Sam replied. Scared people beg. Angry people negotiate. She's negotiating. That sounded exactly like her. Sam exhaled through the phone before continuing. Daniel, you need to understand something. If we file the response as planned, everything goes public. Not just the petition, the forged medical document, the unauthorized system access, the identity breach. All of it. I know, I said. And so does she. Which means she's going to make a move before you do. I looked out the window at the employees walking into the building. Let her, I said. Because I'm done playing defense. After we hung up, I stayed at my desk for a few minutes, thinking about what was coming next. I knew Emily better than she realized. She wouldn't sit still. She wouldn't wait. If she felt cornered, she'd strike first. And right on cue, at 8:03 a.m., my assistant buzzed through the intercom saying Emily was downstairs asking to see me. I told her to send Emily up. The elevator doors opened a minute later, and Emily stepped out, dressed sharply, polished, composed. But her eyes were different. They didn't have the confident sharpness from last night. They were calculating, fast-moving, taking in the office, the people, the closed doors, like she was trying to figure out how much she could salvage. She walked into my office and closed the door without asking. Dad, she said, we need to talk before you make a mistake. I raised an eyebrow. You mean before I protect myself? She didn't flinch. She sat down across from me, crossing one leg over the other, hands folded neatly, posture perfect. I'm offering you a compromise, she said. Withdraw your response. Let me handle the transitional leadership plan. You stay on as founder emeritus. Publicly, nothing changes. Privately, you get to relax. I take the weight off your shoulders. It was almost funny. She really thought she was being generous. What do you want in return? I asked, even though I already knew. Her answer was immediate. Full operational authority. Control of the board. I handle all future mergers, restructuring, and acquisitions. I stared at her for a long moment. Emily, you forged a doctor's signature. She stiffened. Dad, you hacked into a restricted payroll system. It was a one-time. You filed a petition to strip me of my rights. I didn't mean, and now you want me to hand you the company as a reward? For the first time since she walked in, her voice cracked. I did it for us. I leaned forward. No, you did it for you. She inhaled sharply, eyes glistening with an anger she didn't bother to hide this time. Fine, she said. If you want a war, then don't blame me for how it ends. She stood and headed for the door. But before she opened it, she turned back. You should know something, she said. Mom's talking to the board. They think you're unstable. They think you're making rash decisions. They're willing to call an emergency vote. I felt a slow, cold calm settle over me. Then let them vote, I said. Her jaw tightened, and she left without another word. As soon as the door clicked shut, my intercom buzzed again. My assistant whispered that someone else wanted to see me. Someone who didn't have an appointment. A board member. Then another call came through on my personal line. A partner from our manufacturing branch. Then another. Our lead investor overseas. I suddenly understood. Emily was moving faster than I expected. Too fast. She wasn't trying to talk me down. She was trying to beat me to the punch. She wanted to sway the board before I could expose her. She wanted to control the narrative. She wanted to redefine the truth before I could show them the real one. And that was when it hit me. She didn't realize I'd already taken precautions. She didn't know about my contingency successor. She didn't know about the 3 people who already backed me privately. She didn't know the document she forged had a digital fingerprint. She didn't know everything she touched left a trail. She thought she was cornering me. She didn't understand she was walking straight into my meeting. The one I had already scheduled. The one starting in 30 minutes with the entire board. And in 30 minutes, she was going to learn the one lesson she never expected from her father. I didn't build this company by being easy to overthrow. The boardroom felt different that morning, like the air was thicker. I've sat at that long mahogany table for more than 20 years, through recessions, expansions, layoffs, and record-breaking quarters, but I've never walked into it wondering if my own daughter was about to lead a coup against me. When I pushed open the glass door, most of the board was already there. Richard from finance, arms folded. Lila from operations, eyes sharp behind her glasses. 2 outside investors on a video screen at the end of the room. And at the far side, in my usual seat, sat Emily. She didn't sit at the side chair like she always did. She sat at the head, my seat. My ex-wife was beside her, not a board member, not an officer, but there like a silent sponsor. A few eyes flicked between us as I walked in. Some looked uneasy. Some avoided my gaze. Nobody greeted me the way they normally did. That told me everything about the conversations Emily had been having in private. I walked calmly past her, pulled out my regular chair at the head of the table, and sat down without asking permission. I didn't look at her when I did it. I looked at the board. Good morning, I said. My voice sounded exactly the way I wanted it to, steady, measured, not a hint of tremor. Emily's jaw tightened. She smiled quickly, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes, and said she had called this informal emergency discussion to address some concerns about leadership stability. I let her talk, let her run through her speech. She spoke about my age, about how demanding the industry had become, about how the market reacts poorly to uncertainty. She said the words succession plan 3 times in 5 minutes. She tried to make it sound like she was worried about me. But she wasn't looking at me when she spoke. She was looking at the investors on the screen and the members who could vote. My ex-wife sat very still, hands folded, eyes downcast, playing the role of the quiet, supportive former spouse who was just concerned. I recognized the performance. She'd done versions of it in court years ago. When Emily finished, she paused, clearly expecting a reaction. A few board members shifted in their chairs, uncomfortable but interested. Finally, Richard cleared his throat and asked what exactly Emily was proposing. That was her cue. She slid a prepared folder across the table, copies for everyone, outlining her recommendation. Temporary transfer of CEO authority to her, while we evaluated my cognitive and strategic capacity. Her words softened with legal jargon. She mentioned the petition she'd filed only briefly, calling it a protective measure, as if she'd tucked a blanket over me instead of trying to take my pen away. Before anyone could ask about it, I put my hand on the table and spoke. Before we entertain Emily's proposal, I said, there are a few facts we need to clear up. I pulled a thinner folder from my briefcase and set it down. It looked unimpressive compared to her thick packet, but it weighed more. First, I continued. Despite what's been implied, I have received no official medical diagnosis calling my cognitive function into question. In fact, my primary care doctor retired last year. I slid a printed copy of the forged letter to the middle of the table. Yet somehow, this letter was submitted to the court last week, bearing his name and signature. Lila frowned, leaning forward. I thought Dr. Patel retired. He did, I said. 5 years working with him. 20 years with this company. I know his signature. Our counsel had it examined. It's a digital copy pasted from an outdated prescription pad template. Richard's head snapped toward Emily. My ex-wife stiffened but stayed silent. Emily went very still. I didn't look at her. I kept talking. Second, there have been claims that I failed to authorize payroll and key payments, causing operational risk. I nodded at Richard. You remember the 2 months in question? When you told me everything processed on time. He nodded slowly. Yes, there were no disruptions. At least not that I saw. That's because there weren't, I said. However, someone else logged into the executive credential system under my ID and approved those transactions. Our IT department pulled the logs. I opened the next page. Timestamps, IP addresses, user activity history. Those approvals were made from a device registered to Emily's office. All eyes turned to her then. She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her get ahead of the story this time. Now, I understand what it looks like, I said, and I kept my voice calm. A daughter helping her father, stepping in when she thinks he's tired, smoothing things over. That might have been forgivable. If she hadn't then used those very same errors she secretly corrected as evidence in a legal petition to have me declared incompetent and removed from control of the company. One of the outside investors on the screen spoke up for the first time, his accent sharp. A petition? Is this true? Emily finally found her voice. She said the petition was protective, that she feared for the company, that she only acted because she thought I was becoming impulsive. She said she never meant to hurt me. I looked directly at her for the first time since the meeting began. You didn't hesitate to file documents that would have given you control over my assets, my home, and my medical decisions, I said. You submitted forged medical evidence and misused secure credentials. That's not protection. That's attempted takeover. The room was dead quiet. Even the hum of the air conditioner felt loud. My ex-wife tried to jump in, saying this was a family matter and not appropriate for a board meeting. One of the senior members cut her off politely, but firmly. If company control was the target, he said, it's absolutely a board matter. I could see Emily's composure slipping now, a faint tremor in her hand, the slight quickening of her breathing. She said I was twisting things, that I was making her look like a monster when she was trying to save what I built. I told her I didn't need saving. Then I opened the final document in my folder. Years ago, I said, long before any of this, I had our lawyers draft an emergency succession protocol. Not because I didn't trust you, Emily, but because I've seen what emergencies do to families and companies. I saw it with my own father. I refused to leave this place vulnerable. I passed around copies of a simple, clear directive. Names, conditions, signatures. If I am ever incapacitated or unwilling to serve, control does not transfer automatically to my child, I said. It transfers to an interim executive committee, Lila, Richard, and our external partner representative, until the board votes on a permanent CEO. That document has been on file with our counsel for 3 years. It predates any petition you filed. That surprised them. Even Emily. She hadn't known. She'd built her entire power play on the assumption that she was the natural successor. She never even checked. That was her arrogance. And her mistake. I looked down the table. So here's where we stand. I am fully competent. I have no diagnosis. The alleged supporting evidence has been exposed as forged. Security logs show unauthorized use of my credentials from Emily's office. A petition has been filed without my knowledge attempting to strip me of control, bypass this board, and place everything in the hands of one person. I let my eyes go back to Emily. That person is sitting at this table, asking you to trust her judgment. She finally snapped. The calm, confident executive mask shattered. She said I was punishing her for wanting responsibility. She said I couldn't stand the idea of stepping down. She said investors didn't respect an aging CEO and that I was risking everything over pride. Her voice echoed off the glass. The more she talked, the more obvious it became this wasn't about my health or the company's safety. It was about her fear of waiting, her impatience, her need to be in charge right now. When she stopped, breathing hard, nobody said a word. Then Lila, who had known me since the first year of the company, spoke quietly. "Emily," she said, "many of us assumed you'd take leadership one day. You're talented. You're smart. But if you can do this to your own father in secret, what would you do to a partner or a shareholder when you get impatient?" Richard closed the folder in front of him and leaned back. "If this petition had succeeded," he said slowly, "we wouldn't even be in this room. We'd just receive an email announcing Daniel's retirement due to medical issues and your appointment as his replacement." The outside investor nodded on screen. "This kind of maneuver makes us nervous. Not about Daniel. About you." Emily looked like she'd been punched. She turned to me, eyes blazing, like this was my fault. Like I had forced her hand. She didn't understand that I didn't put those words in their mouths. Her actions did. I took a breath and spoke one last time. "I'm not asking you to protect me from my daughter," I said to the board. "I can handle that myself. I'm asking you to protect this company from bad precedent, from allowing deception to be rewarded with power." I folded my hands and leaned back. "So, call your emergency vote if you want. Decide who you trust more with the future of this place, someone who built it, or someone who tried to take it by filing a petition before dinner." The room went completely still. The board chair, who hadn't spoken once until now, finally cleared his throat and asked everyone but voting members to step out. That meant Emily. That meant my ex-wife. That meant me. As we left the room, Emily brushed past me without looking up. Her shoulders were rigid. Her mother's face was pale. They had walked in expecting to watch me be dismantled. Instead, they were the ones waiting outside while my fate, and hers, was decided without either of us in the room. And for the first time since this all began, I felt something other than anger. I felt the shift of momentum, the wheel turning. And I knew whatever happened in that boardroom, my daughter's plan would never be the same again. The hallway outside the boardroom has never felt so long or so quiet. Emily stood on one side with her arms crossed tight against her chest, staring at the floor like she could burn a hole through the carpet. Her mother stood beside her, whispering something meant to sound comforting, but coming out tense and shaky. I stood several feet away, leaning calmly against the wall, watching the glass door where my company, my life's work, was deciding whether to keep me or hand the keys to someone who tried to remove me like a bad file from a computer. Emily didn't look at me. Not once. She didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. I could feel the panic radiating off her even though she tried to hide it behind a cold corporate mask. She was a good actress, but not good enough for this stage. It took the board 19 minutes. I counted every one of them, not from anxiety, but from something quieter, something heavier. The kind of weight that settles in after betrayal, when anger has drained away and only clarity remains. The door finally opened. The board chair stepped out first. His face was neutral, not warm, not hostile, just unreadable. Behind him, Richard and Lila followed, their expressions controlled. One of the outside investors was still on the screen, visible through the doorway. The chair cleared his throat. "Daniel," he said, "we have reached a decision." Emily straightened with a hopeful jerk, as if she'd been waiting to spring. He held up a hand before she could speak. "Emily, we will address you afterward." That alone told her everything. She swallowed hard. I could hear it from where I stood. The chair turned to me. "The board unanimously rejects the petition's implications and affirms your capacity to continue serving as CEO." He paused for a moment, letting the words settle, and for the first time all morning, some of the pressure in my chest released. But he wasn't finished. "We also voted to initiate a formal investigation into the use of executive credentials without authorization, the submission of forged medical documents, and any attempt to influence corporate governance through undisclosed means." His eyes shifted toward Emily. Not unkind, not cruel, just final. Effective immediately, Emily is suspended from all duties within the company pending the conclusion of this investigation. Emily gasped. Her mother whispered, No, they can't do that." But the chair had already turned away, inviting the board members back inside for signatures. The door shut behind them, leaving the three of us in the hallway. The silence was louder than anything said that day. Emily finally snapped. "You ruined me," she hissed, stepping toward me. Her voice shook. "You did this. You turned them against me." I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. "I didn't need to turn anyone against you," I said. "You did that on your own." She trembled with rage, like she wanted to scream but couldn't find the air. I was trying to protect the future, she said. You're getting older, you're slowing down, and you were going to hand my legacy to strangers instead of me. Your legacy? I repeated calmly. You tried to take my house, my rights, my company, and you call it your legacy? Her jaw clenched. Her mother put a hand on her arm, trying to pull her back. Emily jerked away. You're punishing me, she said. You're acting like I'm the villain in your story. You're not the villain, I answered. You're just someone who thought loyalty was optional. That hit her harder than a shout. She blinked fast, as if holding back tears she refused to let fall. Then the boardroom door opened again. The chair invited me back in to finalize documentation. Emily was told to wait in the lobby. She froze, looking at the closed door then back at me, and for the first time since this began, I saw fear beneath the bitterness. Real fear. Her mother guided her away slowly, whispering, urging her to keep her head down, promising her it wasn't over. Emily didn't answer. Inside the boardroom, everyone stood as I walked in. It wasn't required, but after the morning showdown, it meant something. The chair handed me the official resolution, my authority affirmed, the investigation launched, the succession protocol formally acknowledged. I signed. Richard signed. Lila signed. The outside investors added their electronic signatures. The room felt different now. Calmer. Clearer. The storm had passed, leaving the wreckage on the other side of the glass. When the meeting ended, Richard walked with me toward the elevator. You okay? He asked. I nodded. You didn't deserve this, he said. But you handled it. I thanked him. He stopped me before I stepped inside. Daniel, he added softly, I hope you know, this wasn't about your age. None of us doubted you. It struck me how much I had needed to hear that without realizing it. I rode the elevator down to the lobby where Emily was sitting on a leather bench, staring at the floor with red eyes. Her mother sat rigid beside her, holding her handbag like a shield. When they saw me, Emily stood quickly. Is it over? She asked. Her voice was small for the first time. I looked at her, at the daughter I raised, at the woman she became without telling me she was turning hard inside. No, I said quietly. Not even close. Because the boardroom wasn't the end. It was only the first battlefield. The real war, her legal petition, the forged documents, the consequences she never imagined, was about to begin. And I wasn't backing down. Not anymore. I left the office building with the afternoon sun hitting the glass like it always did, but nothing about the day felt normal. Emily and her mother followed several steps behind me through the lobby, whispering sharply, probably rehearsing excuses or planning their next angle. I didn't acknowledge them. I stepped outside into the warm air, took a slow breath, and called the one person who had been steady through all of this, my lawyer, Anthony. He picked up before the first ring finished. How did the board meeting go? He asked. They suspended her, I said, and they opened a full investigation. There was a short pause on the line. Good, he said. Then it's time for phase 2. I met him at his office 20 minutes later. Anthony is 50-something like me, but sharper, calmer, and built for war. He didn't bother with small talk. He slid 3 folders across the table. These, he said, will decide how much damage Emily and your ex-wife take. The first was the forged medical document, the letter claiming I was cognitively impaired. Beside it was a notarized statement from my retired doctor, swearing he didn't write the letter, didn't examine me, and hadn't seen my daughter or ex-wife since my last checkup years ago. Falsifying medical documentation during a competency petition is a felony, Anthony said, punishable by prison time if the judge feels like making an example. He opened the next folder. This one, he said, is discovery from the petition they filed. Screenshots, text messages, emails, all between my ex-wife and my daughter. The paper trail of their plan. It wasn't emotional. It was calculated. They discussed timing. They discussed how to make me look forgetful. They discussed when to file so the judge assigned would be the older guy who hates drama. They even discussed when to push me toward a medical evaluation I didn't need so they could claim concern. Each message was like a blade. My daughter's words were clinical, strategic, cold. No confusion. No desperation. Just ambition dressed up as concern. Anthony watched my face as I read. Daniel, he said quietly, they didn't do this out of panic. They did it because they believed they could get away with it. I nodded. Then he opened the third folder. This is the one, he said, that will break the case open. Inside were the IT forensics from the company, the logs proving someone used my executive credentials from Emily's office in the month leading up to her petition. Every timestamp matched her schedule, not mine. Anthony leaned back in his chair, She wanted to show the court paperwork errors, missed payments, forgotten approvals, all while secretly doing them herself. It's classic manufactured incompetence. Judges hate that. He put all 3 folders together, tapped them once, and looked me dead in the eye. Daniel, we're not defending you anymore. We're going after them. Before I could respond, his assistant opened the door and whispered something in his ear. Anthony nodded, then turned to me. They're here. I didn't understand at first. Who? He stood. Your daughter. And your ex-wife. They just walked into the lobby demanding an emergency meeting. They think they can negotiate. I laughed. I didn't plan to, but the sound came out before I could stop it. Of course they came running the minute the board didn't fold for them. Of course they thought they could talk their way out of a legal disaster. Anthony looked at me. Do you want me to send them away? I shook my head. No. Bring them in. 2 minutes later, they entered the conference room like they were walking into a dentist's office, not a battlefield. Emily looked like she hadn't slept. My ex-wife still wore the same cold expression she'd been perfecting for decades. Emily sat without asking. Dad, we need to talk. Her mother sat beside her, already in spokesperson mode. This has gone far enough, she said. This is a family misunderstanding. The board overreacted. Lawyers are escalating things. We should handle this calmly, without making a mess. Anthony didn't even look at her. He looked at me, waiting for my lead. I leaned forward, hands clasped. You want to handle this calmly? I asked. Fine. Let's start with the forged letter. Emily froze. Her mother blinked. What letter? She asked, trying to sound confused. Anthony slid it across the table. Not the forged one, the real doctor's sworn affidavit stating it was fake. Emily's face drained of color. Her mother reached for the paper, but Anthony gently moved it away. We'll discuss evidence in front of a judge, he said. Not here. Emily swallowed hard. Dad, I didn't forge anything. I thought, Mom said. Her mother cut her off sharply. Don't start. You told me you had confirmation from the doctor. Anthony opened the second folder, screenshots of their messages. The court will be very interested, he said, in the part where you discuss filing the petition the day before the quarterly meeting. Emily's breathing turned shallow. Her mother shifted, suddenly less confident. Then Anthony opened the third folder. And this, he said, ties everything together. Unauthorized credential use. Fraudulent activity. Intent to create evidence of incompetence. He closed the folder with a soft thud. This isn't a misunderstanding, he said. It's a coordinated attempt to strip Daniel of his civil rights, take control of his assets, and manipulate corporate governance. Judges don't negotiate with that. Emily finally broke. Dad, please, she whispered. You can't do this. I'm your daughter. There was fear in her voice now, real fear, the kind that comes when someone realizes the ground under their feet is gone. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lean forward. I simply said the truth. Emily, you stopped being my daughter the moment you tried to erase me. She covered her mouth with her hand. Her mother grabbed her arm. We're leaving, she snapped. This meeting is over. She stood, pulling Emily up with her. But just before they reached the door, Anthony spoke. One more thing, he said calmly. You should expect a temporary restraining order within 48 hours. You will not contact Daniel, visit his home, or interfere with the investigation. And you should prepare for the district attorney to review the forgery. Emily stopped walking. She looked at me over her shoulder, eyes wide, tears unspilled. Dad, please, I didn't answer. I didn't need to. They walked out slowly, one angry, the other shattered. Anthony turned to me. You ready for the next step? I nodded once. What's next? He closed the folders, stacked them neatly, and said, Now we show the court exactly what they tried to do. And we take back the rest of your life. The courthouse lobby was colder than I remembered. Polished stone floors, high ceilings, the faint echo of footsteps bouncing in every direction. I've sat in boardrooms, negotiation tables, and contract disputes, but standing there waiting for a judge to decide whether your own child tried to erase you, that's a different kind of weight. Anthony walked beside me carrying a slim briefcase, not the full set of evidence yet, because today wasn't the big hearing. Today was the preliminary one. The hearing where the judge reviews the petition, the counter-evidence, and decides whether it proceeds or gets shut down on the spot. We're not here to win, Anthony said quietly as we approached the courtroom doors. We're here to show the judge that they lied. Once we do that, everything else collapses. Across the hallway, Emily stood with her mother and a lawyer I didn't recognize. Young, cheap suit, Probably hired in a panic after her previous plan blew up. Emily didn't look at me. Her mother did, with that familiar glare, half resentment, half fear, like she still believed she should be able to control the narrative but no longer knew how. The bailiff opened the door. "Carter, competency matter," he called. We stepped in. The courtroom was smaller than the ones you see on TV. No jury box, just rows of benches and a single judge elevated at the front. Judge Harmon, a serious man in his 60s with tired eyes and a reputation for hating manipulated petitions. Good. That worked for us. Everyone took their seats. Emily's lawyer introduced himself as representing the petitioners, plural, which meant my ex-wife was still attached to this disaster. Anthony stood next, representing Mr. Daniel Carter, the respondent. The judge nodded. He looked at the petition first, then at Emily, then at me. "Before we begin," he said, "I need to ask the petitioners whether they wish to proceed with their claim as filed." Emily's lawyer glanced at her, waiting. She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. She wanted to back out. She wanted to run. But her mother nudged her, the same way she used to push her into piano recitals she didn't want. Emily swallowed. "Yes, Your Honor," she said. The judge lifted the petition. "The claim states Mr. Carter has demonstrated significant cognitive decline and is unable to manage his personal or financial affairs." He looked at me directly. "Mr. Carter, do you believe that to be true?" "No, Your Honor," I said calmly. "And I have evidence to prove the claims were fabricated." Emily stiffened. Her mother grabbed her arm under the table. The judge nodded to Anthony. "Proceed." Anthony approached with 3 documents. Not the full folders, just the parts he needed to sink their ship before they could even argue. "Your Honor," he said, "we're submitting evidence that the primary medical letter attached to the petition is forged, as confirmed by the doctor whose signature appears on the document." He handed the affidavit first. The judge read it. His eyebrows lifted. "Dr. Patel states under oath that he did not evaluate Mr. Carter, did not write this letter, and retired last year." He turned slowly toward Emily and her lawyer. "Counsel, would you like to explain how a retired physician's signature ended up on your filing?" The room went silent. Emily's lawyer stammered. "Your Honor, my client believed the document was legitimate." "Believe?" Judge Harmon repeated sharply. "Did she obtain it? Did she verify it?" Emily's voice cracked. I thought it came from Dad's old records." "His old records?" the judge asked. "Or your own desperation?" The courtroom shifted. Even her lawyer flinched. Anthony continued. "Your Honor, we also have evidence of unauthorized use of Mr. Carter's executive credentials from the petitioner's office, used to create the appearance of financial mismanagement." He handed over the IT logs. The judge studied them for a long moment. Then he exhaled. "So not only was the medical claim fabricated," he said, "but the financial inconsistencies cited as evidence were created through unauthorized access." "Yes, Your Honor," Anthony said. "By the petitioner." Emily finally broke. "I didn't mean to hurt him," she blurted out. Her mother hissed, "Stop talking," under her breath. Emily shook her head, voice trembling. I thought he wasn't going to hand the company to me. I thought he'd give it to strangers, and I had to." "Had to what?" the judge said. "Forge documents? Lie under oath? Strip your father of his rights?" She started crying quietly. Her mother squeezed her arm hard, but even she looked pale now, like she knew they had walked into a courtroom with a match in hand and accidentally doused themselves in gasoline. The judge leaned back in his chair, unimpressed. "Petitioner's counsel," he said, "do you have any medical evidence, real, verified evidence, to support your claim?" The lawyer shook his head. "Not at this time, Your Honor." "Do you have any financial evidence, other than the logs now proven fraudulent?" "No, Your Honor." "Do you have any eyewitness testimony through a medical professional or long-term caregiver?" "No, Your Honor." "Do you have anything at all?" Another silence. Emily's voice cracked again. "I was scared," she whispered. "I didn't think he'd listen to me. I didn't think I had time." Judge Harmon didn't soften. He didn't comfort. He simply said, "Fear does not justify fraud." Anthony stepped back to our table. He didn't need to say more. The judge already knew where this was going. "This petition," Judge Harmon said, lifting the document between his fingers, "is an abuse of the probate system, a waste of judicial resources, and a direct attempt to exploit the law for personal gain." He looked at Emily with a sharpness that made her stop breathing. "The court hereby dismisses the petition with prejudice." Emily's shoulders collapsed. Her mother closed her eyes like she'd been slapped. "Furthermore," The judge continued. I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for review of potential criminal charges, including forgery, fraud, and intentional misrepresentation. Emily's lawyer dropped his pen. Then the judge looked at me. Mr. Carter, you are free to go. And for what it's worth, your composure today speaks more about your competence than any document ever could. He gave a single nod. Court is adjourned. The gavel hit. Chair scraped. A deputy unlocked the side door. Emily just sat there, staring at the empty air in front of her, unable to process everything collapsing around her. Her mother tried to pull her up, whispering frantically, but Emily didn't move. Not for a long time. And as I walked out of that courtroom, the weight I'd been carrying for weeks finally lifted. But I also knew this wasn't over. The legal petition was dead, but the consequences, the criminal side, the public side, had only just begun. And I was ready, because the next step wasn't defense. It was justice. Walking out of that courtroom felt like stepping out of a storm cellar after a tornado. The air was clearer, lighter, everything strangely quiet compared to the tension inside. Anthony walked beside me, phone already buzzing with calls from reporters, business associates, and partners who somehow knew something had happened even before we stepped outside. News travels fast when a man with my name and my company gets dragged into a legal mess. I didn't answer anyone yet. I couldn't. Not until I handled the one thing that still felt unfinished. We got into Anthony's car. Before the door even shut, he said, Daniel, the DA's office is taking this seriously. They already requested the full evidence folder. He sounded steady, but I saw the hint of anger still simmering under his professionalism. He'd known Emily since she was little. This betrayal hit him too. It'll move fast, he added. Faster than she expects. I nodded. Let it. He looked at me, studying my face. You're thinking about talking to her, aren't you? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence was enough. Anthony sighed. Just don't do it alone. I nodded again, but didn't commit. He dropped me off at my house. The second I stepped inside, I knew I wasn't alone. Emily was on my couch. No mother. No lawyer. No audience. Just her. She looked smaller somehow, almost deflated, like the courtroom air had finally left her lungs. Her eyes were red, not from the quiet tears I saw there, but from the kind that come after an entire life implodes in a single afternoon. She stood up slowly. Dad, she whispered. Her voice didn't sound like the woman who tried to take everything from me. It sounded like the girl who used to run across the backyard with skinned knees and messy hair, yelling for me to push her higher on the swing. But I couldn't forget the petition, the forged letter, the attempt to erase my rights like I was a problem to be managed. So I stayed standing. How did you get in? I asked. Mom still has a key, she murmured. She drove off. I told her I needed to talk to you alone. That surprised me. She usually hid behind her mother when things went bad. Emily looked at the floor. Dad, before you say anything, I know what I did was unforgivable. And I'm not here to ask you to pretend it wasn't. Her voice broke for a second before she forced it steady. But I need to explain why. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because I needed to hear what she thought her justification was. She took a breath. It wasn't about the company. Not really. It wasn't even about the house. Mom pushed me. Yes, she did. She told me I deserved everything after what you put her through, but this wasn't about her. She looked at me then, eyes wet but finally honest. I was scared, Dad. Not scared of losing control. Scared of losing you. That stopped me cold. What do you mean? I asked. She wiped her face. Uncle Ray, she said quietly. My brother. Her uncle. He had passed 2 years earlier after a fast, devastating battle with early-onset dementia at 58. The same age I am now. My chest tightened. You started forgetting small things, she said. Nothing big. A name, a date, a tool you were looking for. And every time it happened, I saw Uncle Ray again. I saw how it started. How none of us took it seriously until it was too late. Her voice cracked. I panicked. I thought if I waited for another evaluation, another missed appointment, another moment where you forgot something, I'd lose the chance to protect the company, protect the house, protect everything you built. She shook her head, crying harder now. I didn't want to take your life away. I wanted to save it. I exhaled, long and slow. The room seemed to shrink and expand at the same time. Emily didn't look like a greedy heir in that moment. She looked like a daughter who'd let fear turn into something ugly and destructive. That doesn't justify forgery, Emily, I said quietly. She nodded quickly. I know. I messed everything up. I let Mom push me. I let fear take over. I hurt you, Dad. I hurt the one person who's always been there for me. She took a shaky breath. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to protect me from what's coming. I just needed you to know the truth. I let the silence sit there for a moment, long enough for both of us to feel it. Then Emily reached into her bag and pulled out a blue folder. She set it on the coffee table. This is everything, she said. Every email, every text, every note Mom sent me pushing the petition, every draft of the forged letter, every message where I told her I didn't want to do it and where she told me I had no choice. She stepped back. I'm giving it to you. For the DA, for your lawyer, for whatever you want to do next. I stared at the folder. Then I stared at her. She wasn't lying. And that was the moment I realized something important. My daughter wasn't the mastermind. My ex-wife was. She lit the fire. Emily was the one who held the match too long and burned herself. But she came here today to put out the flame. Why now? I asked quietly. Why bring this to me? Emily swallowed hard. Because today I saw who you really are and who I became. You walked into that courtroom steady and clear. I fell apart the second a lie cracked. You're not incompetent, Dad. I am. For the first time in weeks, I felt something soften in my chest. Not forgiveness, but recognition. She was broken, not malicious. How far did she push you? I asked. Emily looked at the floor. Farther than I want to admit. I nodded. Then tomorrow, I said, we start telling the DA the truth. All of it. She nodded. Dad, she whispered, voice trembling. Does this mean we're okay? I shook my head slowly. Not yet. The way her face felt almost hurt to watch. But, I added, this is the first step. Emily cried again, quieter this time. Then she left, closing the door behind her. I stood there for a long moment staring at the blue folder on my table. Inside that folder was gasoline. And tomorrow, the match was going to be lit in the DA's office. Not out of revenge. Out of necessity. Because my ex-wife hadn't realized something. She hadn't just attacked me. She attacked the wrong version of me. And the man walking into that DA meeting in the morning wasn't broken, scared, or confused. He was ready. I barely slept that night. Not from stress anymore, but from clarity. The kind of clarity that shows up when the dust finally settles, and you can see exactly who stood with you, who stood against you, and who set the fire in the first place. By 8 the next morning, I was in the DA's building. Anthony met me at the entrance carrying the full evidence binder and Emily's blue folder on top. He gave a nod that wasn't dramatic, but meant everything. This is it, he said. This is where the truth either sinks her or buries her. And he didn't mean Emily. He meant my ex-wife, Linda, the architect behind every bad decision my daughter made. We checked in, walked to the conference room, and sat across from Assistant District Attorney Hale, a man with sharp eyes that didn't blink much. He opened the file. Mr. Carter, he said, what you presented last week was already strong. What your daughter gave us yesterday, that's a whole different level. He placed the blue folder between us. This isn't just fraud, he said. This is coercion, falsification, identity misuse, and attempted abuse of the probate system. He tapped his pen on the table. Your ex-wife pushed your daughter into a criminal act. That doesn't absolve Emily, but it changes the entire picture. Anthony leaned forward. We're prepared to testify. Both of us. And Emily is willing to cooperate fully. Hale nodded. Then we moved fast. He opened the folder and read quietly for a few minutes. When he finally looked up, he said something that hit with the weight of a verdict. Mr. Carter, this case is no longer preventative. It's prosecutorial. That was it. The moment everything turned. By noon, the DA's office had already drafted subpoenas. By evening, they had secured warrants for phone records, email accounts, and financial transfers attached to both my ex-wife and Emily. And by the next morning, the final step began. They called her in. Not Emily. Her mother. I didn't expect to be present, but Hale invited me. She needs to see who she tried to dismantle, he said. And she needs to see you standing. So I went. The conference room was the same one we'd met in yesterday, but somehow it felt colder. The door opened, and Linda walked in wearing a blazer too expensive for someone who hadn't held a real job in years. Her eyes flicked to me, surprised, then annoyed, then confused, like she'd expected me to be slumped in a chair, not sitting tall, not calm, not whole. She's Saturday. I don't know why I'm here, she said sharply. Hale opened the folder. We'll make that clear. He started with the forged letter, then the drafted email she'd sent Emily, pressuring her, manipulating her, telling her the company was rightfully hers, telling her I would ruin everything out of spite, telling her the conservatorship was the only solution. He showed her the message where she told Emily to fake symptoms if necessary. He showed her the bank transfers she'd made into a hidden account 3 weeks before the petition was filed, preparing for a financial grab once the company fell into her control. Linda tried to interrupt. "Those are taken out of context," she snapped. "You don't understand our family dynamics." Hale ignored that. "Mrs. Carter, we have enough evidence to pursue multiple charges." She glared at me then, sharp and poisonous. "You're doing this because you hate me." I stared back evenly. "I'm doing this because you tried to erase me from my life." Her jaw tightened. "Emily came to you, didn't she? She betrayed me." "No," I said. "You betrayed her first." Hale closed the binder. "Mrs. Carter, you have 2 options. Cooperate, or we prosecute without negotiation." She folded her arms, leaning back like she still believed she was the smartest person in the room. "I don't cooperate with threats." "It's not a threat," Hale said calmly. "It's a choice." And then he said the sentence that made her freeze. "Your daughter has already agreed to cooperate with full testimony." The room went dead quiet. Linda's face went blank, then panicked, then desperate in 3 seconds flat. She what?" "Everything," Hale said. "Every message, every instruction, every motive." For the first time in years, I saw my ex-wife truly stunned. And that's when she made her mistake. She turned to me and whispered, "You think you're winning? You think destroying me will make you whole?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lean forward. I just said the truth, steady and clear. "This isn't about destroying you. It's about stopping you." Hale ended the meeting with a final notice. Charges were moving forward. Linda would need criminal representation. She left the room without looking back. That night, Emily came to my house again. She didn't sit. She just stood in the doorway, face pale but calmer than before. "The DA talked to me," she said. "I told them everything." "Good," I replied. "It's the right thing." She nodded slowly. "Dad, what happens to her now?" "Whatever the law decides." She closed her eyes. "And what happens to us?" I studied her, not as the daughter who betrayed me, not as the frightened woman who made terrible choices, but as someone finally facing the consequences and standing in front of me anyway. "We rebuild," I said, "if you want to." Her shoulders loosened with a quiet relief. "I do." That was enough for now. A week later, the board convened again. Only this time, Emily wasn't the one being considered for leadership. She sat in the back row beside me while the board reviewed the updated succession plan I'd drafted personally. It didn't name her. It named the person who had actually earned it. The CFO who had been with me 20 years, loyal, steady, competent. When the vote passed unanimously, Emily nodded. She didn't argue. She didn't get upset. She understood. After the meeting, she slipped her hand onto my arm. "Dad," she said quietly, "thank you for not giving up on me." I answered honestly. "You gave me a reason not to." 2 months later, my ex-wife was indicted. Emily testified. I did too. The judge didn't let her wiggle out with excuses. And when the sentence came, it wasn't my victory. It was the law doing what it was meant to do. I walked out of that courthouse the same way I walked out of the first one. Calm, steady, and finally free. Today, my company is stable. My home is peaceful. And my daughter and I, slowly, carefully, are building something new. Not perfect, not forgotten, but honest. And that's enough. Because in the end, the truth didn't just save my life. It rebuilt it. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below, and don't miss more thrilling stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.